All right. Okay, thanks, Blake. Hi, everybody. Thanks for our joining our weekly discussion for this the war in Israel between Israel and Gaza. And then what's going the wars the conflict in the Middle East. I'm Michael McCoskey, I'm President CEO of Jinsa. We got our full cast of characters of our Israeli distinguished fellows here with us. I got on my upper left, I got General Norkin. I don't know what everybody else sees, but he's on my upper left, former Air Force, Israeli Air Force commander and distinguished fellow with Jinsa. On my upper right, I got General Yaakov Weiss, former J3 head of IDF operations, and our senior vice president, or Julian Josephson, senior vice president. And I have our mobile General Yaakov Amidjor, former, also another distinguished Jinsa fellow at our Gamunder Center, and among other things, a former national security advisor in Israel. Okay, let's get right to it. There's a few things I'd like to discuss, and I want to discuss. I want to see what's going on in Rafa, but before I get to that, I have a little broader question, because this keeps coming up. We're reading it in the news, and I know it's come up in previous webinars, but I'd like to address this a little more. And that's the issue that we are seeing senior Israeli officials, including the Minister of Defense, Gallant, but we've heard this also from Benny Gantz, who's head of the National Unity Party, but also former defense minister and chief of staff of the IDF. And I think we're hearing this from senior IDF leaders. This has been reported, senior IDF generals, that there's a certain frustration that there doesn't seem to be an evident day after plan. Who will take over in terms of governance, and that based on what some of these folks are saying, that it's undermining the war effort and it's making it harder for the IDF. Now, I'd like to ask each of you about this issue. I'll start with General Amidjor first, and then, but I think let me just ask you, General, and I know we don't do politics on these webinars, but one of the criticism, of course, is, and I know you're not going to address it, is that Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't want to put this out because of his coalition issue. He's got right-wing coalition members who not only don't want to talk about a day after involving Palestinians in Gaza, but that actually want to reclaim for Israel sovereignty on parts of Gaza. And that's what's one of the reasons that is paralyzing him. Tell me what's your assessment. Is this a valid criticism right now? And what do you see as the reason why well, it's really more, I guess, on Netanyahu, why they're not putting out a day after plan. I may add, of course, our organization, Jinsa, has put one out we put out a report in collaboration with the Vandenberg Coalition several months ago, our own day after plan, and based on serious and long conversations with many experts in the region. Okay, go ahead, General.
Thank you for inviting me this week as usual. My view, I don't know why the Prime Minister is doing that and why those who criticize him are doing that. Politics is probably taking place in both sides, decision and criticism of the decisions. For my analysis, I don't represent anyone, is that it is too early, and it might be even harmful if we will decide now, and that that should not be any influence on the military side of the operation. There are 6 options for who might take care for the civilian side in the day after. It might be us, the Palestinian Authority, Arab countries, Western countries, combination between Arab countries and Western countries, and no one. It will be a chaos in which the strong will survive. Our interest is very clear. Our interest is that it will be Area A situation. Israelis are not there, but the IDF can go in and out whenever there is a need based on intelligence or decision or whatever, and it's decision of the military commander, not of the civilians. It's not a political problem, not international problem, it's a military issue. And will be a perimeter around the border, half kilometer, and that will be no man's land. But inside the Gaza Strip, the IDF will go in only when it will be a need. These are the options, and these are the interests that Israel should say. Why I think it's too early? It's too early because of two issues. One, the minute that we will declare who, from our point of view, is responsible for, we have a new partner in the war. Because he will come and say, guys, you want me to take responsibility? Don't do that, do that. Don't do it here, don't do it now, whatever. It's complicated enough without a new partner. We have the Americans, we have the Egyptians, we have Hamas, we have ourselves in many cases, and so on and so forth. I don't want another partner in the issue. And the minute that we will decide, we have one. The second reason for not deciding now, it's ridiculous. No one will come in before we will finish the job of destroying Hamas. Not any local guys, not Arabs, not Westerners. Us, we can. But other than that, no one will go in. Not the Palestinian Authority and not other Palestinians. People spoke about Dahlan. He doesn't have any division on the ground. If there is someone which will be ready to come in, and I'm not sure that we'll find one, if there is someone, he will wait till we will finish the job. Before that, he understands that he has to fight Hamas, and no one will be ready to go in and to fight Hamas. For sure, not Westerners, and for sure not Arab countries. And the Palestinian Authority can make decisions, but they don't have the capability. So anyhow, we have to wait till the end, and only when we will end, or towards the end, when will be clear how strong or how weak is Hamas, we will have to apply to those that we might think that they're ready to help, and they will take responsibility or might take responsibility, because I don't see a queue of volunteers to take responsibility for Gaza. For sure, not before we will finish the job. So it's too early from our point of view and from those that we expect to take responsibility point of view.
Oh, sorry.
I want to add one thing which I think is very important. I know that I called one of the ex-generals who is speaking out about the need to decide, and there is an interest. I asked him to come to we will have a meeting next week. He will try to explain to me, because I don't understand the claim. I don't understand how the decision today about who will take care for the civilian side of Gaza Strip in the day after is influencing the way that the IDF is acting. I don't see any connection, not at all. And remember, the day after is a year and a half from now. It's not tomorrow. We have to finish in Rafah. We have to finish in the center of Gaza, some places that we didn't dismantle Hamas in. And then we will begin the process of cleaning it, it will take at least a year. It took us in the West Bank 4 years. And here I think that year will be enough. I'm not sure, but year probably will be enough. So it's a year and almost year and a half away from us, the real day after. Now, when we are there and we are fighting, and the IDF is very active during this stage, and then the mopping up of the area. Probably the IDF should be the responsible organization for spreading the humanitarian aid, to secure organizations which will do it, and so on and so forth. But I don't see anyone who is ready to do it. I don't want anyone that will be part of it, because it will be another partner. And I don't see the relations, any connection between the IDF operation and the decision.
Before I turn to General Norkin and then General Ice, let me ask you one follow-up quickly on that. I hear what you're saying. Let me just press you a little bit more on that, on your earlier point, and you say you don't want another partner. Could you, and is it possible at least that the government could lay out a plan, but not get into the implementation of it? So it lays out, I don't know, I hate to use the word roadmap because it has other connotations maybe, but is that a possibility, so people have some idea? Because that does seem to be, there's a lot of hunger for that. And maybe that also would address some of the criticism of Israel inside Israel and out.
Criticism is not a reason to make decision when it is harming your goal.
Fair enough.
Let's assume that we will say we want the Palestinian Authority, leave alone the argument in Israel if it should be there or not. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, it's the Palestinian Authority. And it will be declared that Israel is saying we are not implementing it, but the Palestinian Authority is the one which we expect to take responsibility for Gaza afterwards. Do you see any possibility that the Palestinian Authority will say, okay, please don't do that. You are making our ability to take responsibility according to your wish. You just declared it. Don't do that and do that. Don't destroy this road and don't blow this bridge, because we need it for the responsibility that we will take later to be responsible for the. I don't want a partner. The one that will be declared as the one which we expect to take responsibility is a new partner in the game. You cannot ignore it anymore. And I think it's a huge mistake. And I don't understand my friends that say that it is a problem for the IDF to continue the operation, because I don't see any connection between what we are doing now in Rafah and who will be responsible. If it is the Palestinian Authority or the locals or the Arab Emirates, how it is connected to what we are doing in Rafah? Not connected at all.
Okay. All right, that's a good point. So fair point, General. I think General Norkin, I should add, not only were you, just for our audience sake, obviously you know it, but General Norkin is not only previous Air Force commander, but before that was J5, head of strategic planning, the IDF. So maybe it's your J5 hat that you're wearing. But do you agree with General Amijor? Do you have a different view? Do you think there is more of a connection with the operations and the lack of putting out a plan right now, or do you agree with General Amijor?
Well, first of all, good evening, and just we might discover that even in my Air Force hat, I can think as a strategic planner.
Yeah, okay, okay, fair enough. I wasn't trying to diminish that.
Big surprises, must say.
I know that General Amidor think that only intelligence generals can think about strategy, but even pilots can do it. But having said that, I think that I agree and I accept the short brief that General Amidor did. But the Prime Minister already declared that we are not going to be in Gaza as the next, let's say, government in Gaza by the IDF. He already declared it in the American news 2 days ago. So out of those 6 options, there is less options. Second, and maybe this is part of the problem, and maybe, Mike, this is also the problem with the paper that Jinsa wrote. It's not a microwave dish. It's more than an oven. It's take time. It's like fade out and fade in. It won't happen in one day. First of all, we need to destroy to the minimum the Hamas threat. And one of our guests here in the webinar already asked, is there is a situation that we are going to destroy Hamas completely and there will be no threat? So the answer is no. But the threat should be a minimum threat with no threat to the Israeli civilians near the border. So it will take time. It will need more and more operations in Gaza. And once we destroy, let's say, 70% from the Hamas capabilities now, in the next step, we are going to achieve another 10%, and the next step, another 10%. And by that, we are going to achieve the war goals. But although it's going to be like a fade out and fade in procedure, and it will take time, and I'm not sure that this is the right time to declare who is going to be and control Gaza. I think that this is the right time to start to discuss it. And I think that we should do some, let's say, war games. Talk about the scenarios, the options. And this is what some of the cabinet members talk about, that we should start to talk about those scenarios. It's not mean that we are going to start to, let's say, declare about the best option. So it's not a black and white. We shouldn't, let's say, declare who is going to control Gaza. It's too early. I agree with General Amidwar, but we should discuss it in the strategic planning procedure. We should start to discuss those scenarios.
Okay, let me turn to General Eich, and may I add, besides being
If I may, one remark.
Oh, please.
There are plans, there are papers both in the Ministry of Defense and in the National Security Council. So they made the research and try to understand the pros and cons, but it is far away from making any decision.
Okay.
And I appreciate, by the way, I want to acknowledge General Norkin's point that pilots also think. So it's very important. There was no doubt on my end.
You learn something new every day.
Okay. So General Eich, and who I had was not only head of IDF operations, but also was, I think, head of the operations division in the 2nd and the FATA. I don't know if it's exactly, but it's not exactly comparable. But I think General Amidwar was just kind of implicitly referencing it. What is your view? Do you think, in your opinion, is this leaks the lack of a stated plan impacting IDF operations right now in Gaza?
Well, it's a bit complicated. It will take me 3 or 4 minutes to explain it, and I'm afraid that I have a bit different view than we have heard here.
Good.
First, let me start by talking about the linkage between the strategic goal as it is defined by the political level and the operational level or the operational plans. There is a direct linkage between those two. And when you are orchestrating the operational arena, it is subjected totally to the strategic end state as it was defined. What those who are advocating for the plans for the day after are implying is to that linkage. But it's far more complicated than that. There are 4 elements that have to be achieved in order to dismantle Hamas. One of them is to destroy its leadership. The second, its military capabilities. The third, its military infrastructure. And the fourth, which was not achieved, is his administrative capabilities. So in order to achieve it, you have to bring someone else to replace him. Now, everyone is using the example of Judea and Samaria in 2004. Let me remind our viewers, in 2004, after we have dismantled the terror activities, most of them from Judea and Samaria, to a bearable level, we, together with our American colleagues, allowed the Palestinian Authority in with the Dayton battalions. Started with 1, 2, 3, up to 9 battalions that were the solutions to the Fauda situation inside Judea and Samaria. Today, this is the paradigm. We can't achieve our goal without having a substitute to Hamas as the administrative power. They are there collecting the goods, collecting the humanitarian support, to include the support from Israel, fuel, food, medical supply, etc., and they are selling it. They are providing those who are in Gaza with those goods. So as long as they do that, they control the population. They manage the population. And that's why it's so vital, not just to finish the military part or the military operations by dismantling the military capabilities of Hamas and the infrastructure. It's also to have a reasonable alternative to that administrative power inside Gaza. And that's why it's so important. And this is without mentioning the challenge that is hovering above everything, which is the hostages. And it's there. And it has a very heavy burden and price on the Israeli public, and I think to some extent on policymakers and the military. Everyone is affected by that. And now, just to complete the description, we have to remember that there is a direct linkage also to the north. Hezbollah is not going to stop his ongoing attacks with all the strides and the operational success that we are achieving in the north. He is not going to stop it as long as we are fighting in Gaza. So there are two options. Either we are going to make him stop with different tools, because basically the tools that we are using in the last 7 months are ineffective to stop him. They are very lethal. They are very effective in terms of leadership and military capabilities that we are degrading. But in terms of strategic achievements, the Israeli residents of the north are still uprooted from their villages. So the description and the linkage between those elements have to be seen and analyzed as a whole. And this is without, going into the international arena and support and so on and so forth that I assume that we'll speak later on. Just to conclude it, I think there is a paradigm that we have to solve here, and without offering a reasonable alternative to the administrative capabilities of Hamas inside Gaza, we won't be able to complete our mission, which is dismantling Hamas and release the hostages.
But let me ask you, Aisha, just one thing, because General Amidjor had said the day after is a ways away. It's not maybe for, he's right here, he could speak for himself, but do you agree with that we're not that close? So maybe
it's the way that we are translating the term the day after. As General Norkin described it, you have to start, you have to cook it, it will take time. In Judea and Samaria, it took us quite a long time to build and to help those battalions to gain certain control on Judea and Samaria, which is, by the way, today, not a very impressive one. Take a look what is going on. But in terms of the last 2 decades, it was reasonable enough together with our activities. But you have to start somewhere. You have to bring the alternative to the table. It won't be effective from day one. You have to build it. So in that sense, I do agree that it will take time.
Okay.
And that's why we have to offer it.
Let me turn to
Okay,
Rob.
I'm not going
go
to argue with Aish. I don't agree to all his assumptions, and I don't understand what is the connection between the operation of the IDF in Rafah or other places and the one which will be responsible for the civilian life, other than the slogan that everything in the army should be ended at the end with political solution. I know the slogan, but I don't think in this case it's connected. We have to dismantle Hamas, and only after that, maybe, I'm not sure that there is one, but maybe someone will be ready to take the responsibility. And the example from the West Bank is not connected to the reality. There was the Palestinian Authority with their capabilities before the 2002 operation, after the 2002 operation. Here is something that will be a substitute to Hamas, not with Hamas. So it's totally different situation, and I think that the example is not the one, but I don't want to argue with where she has his view and I have my view, and we probably will not convince each other.
Well, so no, it's good. Actually, I appreciate it. It makes a more richer discussion to have disagreement. And I think we could always rely on Israelis, particularly, or any Jews, frankly, to have enough of that. So let me ask you, Aish, let me start with you and I'll go the other way on my screen. Let me talk about what's going on in Rafah. And I'd like to get everybody's thoughts because there was a Wall Street Journal editorial, I think it was yesterday, or was it today? I can't remember. And it was suggesting how the administration, the Biden administration, was wrong, and that the IDF, and I know none of you are going to say that, you don't really comment on U.S. policy too much, but that the IDF has been far more successful than than the U.S. officials were suggesting they would be in terms of moving the population in Rafah in terms, and I mean, I have to say, based on the press that I read here, which I'm sure, which is different than there, you wouldn't have even known hardly that there've been 950,000 estimated Palestinians that have been moved out of Rafah. It has been such a quiet story. It's a bit like the Sherlock Holmes, the dog that didn't bark. It's the story that it's a success from an IDF standpoint. We're not reading about. So I'd like to get a sense if you could just explain how you assess how the IDF is doing that and how you see they're progressing inside Rafah.
Well, I'm not just reading publications. I think the IDF is taking only operational considerations here. And the way they have mobilized the population was very effective, by the way, as it was in the north of Gaza. They were using the same tools, leaflets, text messages, and so on and so forth. And it was very effective. And you could have seen it few days ago when we started with 300,000, 600,000, now almost 1 million Palestinians, with a lot of preparations of tents and humanitarian supports in place, waiting for them in designated humanitarian areas, and so on and so forth. So basically, these are the tools. And in terms of the operational tempo, the IDF did what he planned to do, and the pace that they are implementing is totally subjected to the missions that they are getting. And that's why it took them only a few days to reach 2/3 of the Philadelphia axis. Now they have the challenge with the subterranean systems that they have to conduct the research and to degrade and to demolish, and later on to do the rest of the neighborhoods. I have no doubt that they will complete the mission of dismantling the 4 battalions or more in the Rafah area, as they are doing, by the way, today in Jabalia and Zaytun and the other neighborhoods where other Hamas terrorists came back to a certain level of effectiveness and threat. At the end of the day, the mission to dismantle Hamas and to remove the threat from the villages surrounding Gaza, to allow the residents of Gaza to be back to their home, is very clear to the IDF. And it has no linkage to anything else that we have discussed here. What I was trying to convey a few minutes ago is that there is a linkage when you are thinking about the fourth element of dismantling Hamas, which is not a military part.
Yeah. So let me turn to General Norkin, and then I'll go to General Amidjor. General Norkin, how do you assess Rafah? And let me ask you, how concerned are you that a number of terrorists, a number of Hamas fighters have moved on from Rafah? Maybe they're going to Khan Yunis or elsewhere. How do you assess the effectiveness of the mobilization, and how do you see it progressing inside Rafah?
Well, I'm sure that we all understand that we keep Rafah also to be, let's say, a card in our card pocket once we negotiate about the hostages, and now once there is no deal, we can get into Rafah. And I accept completely what Aish described, but I think that the main issue now is the Egyptian border.
I was going to ask him. Yeah.
The Egyptian border is a huge challenge because we need to close this smuggling border, mainly underground tunnels. And from those tunnels, they support all the military industry that Hamas built through the last 15 years. So I think that it needs also a military diplomacy that should be, we should push forward with the Egyptian and to bring to the table the right plan with the technology, with the cooperation, with the new procedures between the IDF and the Egyptian military, how to avoid any weapons smuggling into Gaza.
Okay, I'm glad you brought it up because that was going to be my next question. I'll turn to General Amidjor about the Egyptian situation. Let me bring up two things. General Norkin brought up about the smuggling. I saw a report in the last couple of days that the IDF discovered already, not finished, but already 50 tunnels between Rafah and Egypt. And I wonder, do you see these tunnels there because, do you think the government in Cairo knows about all these tunnels? Why do these tunnels exist? Is it purely financial reasons, or are there other reasons? And let me add a second question about Egypt for you to address, please, General Amidjor. I read a report in CNN, I don't know if it's true, in the last day or so, that suggested a deputy I think head of intelligence in Egypt, I think Deputy Abbas Kamel, if I have his name correctly, that he is responsible for not sharing the terms of a deal between Israel and Hamas, that he altered the terms. So Israel thought it was one thing, and then Hamas and others, so there were false reports about a deal and that the U.S. side was very upset about the Egyptian doing this. I guess I just found my general question for you is I'm not sure I fully understand the Egyptian position on these things, beyond the fact that I know they don't like Hamas and they don't want anyone from Gaza being in their territory.
I don't know how many tunnels had been found by the IDF up till now. I want to say something in general about Egypt and then to make people better understand the situation. Egypt is a very big country, more than 1 million people.
100 million.
100 million. The army is very strong, and it is as strong as the state. A third of the economy is run by the army, from baking bread to bridges on the road. Not on the Nile. They didn't. Okay, doesn't matter. But they build a lot in maybe the biggest constructor in Egypt. when it is coming to big projects of the government. So we have to understand that when the Egyptians are saying something, it doesn't imply that everything is going down the line into the last commander on the ground near somewhere. In this case, near Gaza. And I don't think if there is any way to understand if what was known in Cairo about the number of the tunnels and the way that things have been smuggled in. It's clear that people made money of that. Which people, how many of them, or how much it was spread within the system, which is, if you read books about Egypt, you understand they are not the most, how to call it, keeping the Western rules of legitimacy and paying in a way which allow the tax authorities to take their part in the system. It's a totally different system than what you have in America and what we have in Israel. And this is the way of life in Egypt. It's not something new. It's years from the king time. So I don't know if anyone knows how many tunnels there were there and how the system worked. It's clear that a lot of money was involved. Huge money for the Egyptians and for the Hamas on the other side of the tunnel. This is the first remark. The second one is about look, it's the Middle East. You know, Kissinger spoke about the ambiguity in the as a mediator. You have to have some creative ambiguity for both sides, understand different things, and that's allow you to continue with the. He take it to the extreme. He tells one story to the Hamas and tells one story to us and the Americans. And we didn't know about the story to the Hamas. The Americans didn't know about the story of the Hamas as well. And when it was clear that these two stories cannot go together, it's contradiction, the Egyptians say, okay, we are sorry. It's the Middle East. Don't take it too seriously. It doesn't say anything about the Egyptian strategic approach or blah, 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 blah. It's, you know, they tried. It didn't succeed. Okay, let's continue. It shouldn't be taken too serious. This is Egypt. This is the Middle East. This is the way that people are negotiating. We have to be very careful not to put ourselves in those traps and to be very cautious when we speak with the mediators. But we have to understand the mediator's heart is not always with us. And probably in many cases not with the other side, it is with themselves. So they try to play. I don't think it's a serious issue. Someone tried to play here, it didn't work. Now we are trying again. And we are beginning now a process of renewing the mediation and the negotiations about the hostages, because it's very important for us to release them. So we're ready to go another half a mile to get to a real negotiations about the hostages, but we don't stop the war, the operation in Gaza, in Rafah. We continue in Rafah, we continue in Jabalia. We have been today in Zaytun, to yesterday. We were continuing all the operations in Gaza, the new and the old, and it might be another operation as well in Gaza. We are not going now to give the Hamas the ability to stop the operation just for resuming the negotiations that might be not resumed.
Let me just ask you one follow-up on Egypt, General Amidjor. One person asked question, could Egypt shut down the tunnels, you think, if they want to, and now? And secondly, I guess, how do you perceive the Egyptian interest right now about what Israel's doing in Rafah?
This is, I think, the Egyptians are not saying it. They want. I think that the most important concern for the Egyptian side is that we will not make steps that might lead to a situation in which Palestinians will push the fence on the border and run into Sinai. I think that the success of the IDF to move million people from this area to the northwest side of the operation zone is very important for the Egyptians. They can be less in tension because that is pushing the Palestinians to the other side and not towards the south, in which the Egyptians do not want any Palestinian to cross. There were some Palestinians who succeeded to cross to the Sinai Peninsula. Each of them paid $5,000 cash. I think that is the main concern of the Egyptians, and that will be, they will understand that that is not any situation to be worried about. They will be much easier with the operation, in spite of the fact that they will not publish it. They will not say anything in public, and even condemning Israel in Rafah. In reality, what was the main concern for them is the immigration into or running into the border and crossing it to Sinai. And if that doesn't happen, they don't feel any mercy for the Palestinians, for sure not for Hamas.
Let me just turn General Aish, and I'll maybe just ask each of you a question. General Aish, just one more thing about this with Rafah operations. I assume first of all, do you have any sense about how many Hamas fighters have fled from Rafah with this movement of Palestinians? Okay. Did Israel? I thought I read that Israel didn't set up checkpoints. Was there any checking of IDs or in this movement? Because then it would make it a lot easier, obviously. And if not, why not? Do you think?
There are different tactics that are applied. In the north, in a certain stage, they were using that option. Also, south to Gaza City, they are using such tactics. In Rafah, they are using other tactics. At the moment, the mission is the 4 battalions, is the subterranean the system that have to be demolished and to disconnect the lines of supply for Hamas, and by that to take control. This is the immediate mission. For the long term, the challenge is to have a permanent solution such as the one that we have under the ground in order to make sure that those lines of supply are not to be used. Again, I'm talking about the barrier, the underground barrier that we have built against tunnels.
Yes.
If I may add one remark, I think that as I said, it's here it was more important for us to move the million people than to identify those who are running with them outside the area, because we could put bottlenecks in the way to the area, and then it was more important to move them as early as possible, and we didn't want to put any obstacle on this way, and we didn't want that Hamas will be in a position to block them. If you put such checkpoints, Hamas can use it to entrance to the checkpoint and try to block them. We wanted to build a situation in which it will be very easy to move, and this is one of the reasons how we succeeded to 1 million people in such a short time and very quiet. I
appreciate you're saying that, General Amidjor, because that would seem the implication what General Aish was saying. Why is that the movement more important? Is it because the IDF was keen to try to get and see what's underground, Rafah? Is that the reason? That's the more important objective? Perhaps the hostages are there, or other Hamas leaders? Or?
No, what we want is to dismantle, the system. For dismantling the system, it doesn't matter if another 500 tourists run away from the area, and now they are in some places, I don't know where. They don't have weapons. They don't have command and control capabilities. They don't have the ability to manufacture weapons, rockets, and so on and so forth. We will find them. Don't worry. In the next year, we will clean Gaza, and they will be without a system. It's very important to understand in this stage what important for us is not just the number of people that we are killing, is the fact that we are destroying the system. They don't have intelligence that collect the information that they can be transferred to someone who will make decision to do that and that and that, or very important to manufacture more munition for that and not for that. The system should be destroyed.
Okay.
And then to take all the needed measures to identify who is who and if he was there or not there, we will find a way. As we said, we have a special effort to identify the 3,000 people which took part in the 7th of October assault to our side. Each of them will be killed or captured. No one of them will survive. We have a huge operation to identify them, and they will be identified. But now the focus was on going into Rafah and to dismantle it with a minimal number of civilians surrounded, because we cannot fight in this crowded area with another 1 million people. And at the end, to be in a situation in which the system of Hamas does not exist, and now you have to mopping up the whole area. It will take time. I'll give you an example. We came after months after pulling out our forces from the north. We went back to Shifa Hospital. Not even one shot was shot against our forces from the minute that they crossed the border till they reached the Shifa Hospital. Nothing. It took less than 30 minutes for the tanks to encircle the hospital. To the light infantry, it took less than 18 minutes. And no one shot at them. Why? There is no system. Even if someone identified the crossing of the border, to whom we will report. Even if they told someone, hey guys, they're crossing the border, there is no system to send someone to do something on the way to the hospital. This is what we have in mind after the first stage. And then to begin to clean it, as we are doing now in other places.
And the answer for the fifth question, Mike, is yes. The amount of people that move out from Rafah is more than 900,000. Someone asked, is it true? Yes, it's true. And just to add to General Amidror, I think that we achieved that there is no system, but although there is no system, there are still 1, 2, 3 terrorists that can launch rocket towards the road.
Mm-hmm.
This is the let's say, the problem with the terror organization, that although there is no system, if we are fighting a state with a military and destroy the state's system, the war might be ended. But once you fight the organization, it's not enough to destroy the system.
Yes, but if we succeed to identify all the manufacturing system of Hamas,
Absolutely,
and destroy,
absolutely. Yeah,
and
I
destroy
agree.
all the setups of manufacturing, at the end it will be ended, and they will not have the capability to manufacture more rockets and missiles, and slowly it will be eroded and reduced, and then we will be a situation in which they don't have it.
At the meantime, the people that
Yes,
came
in
back
the meantime,
the citizens that came back to Sderot still got from time to time sirens, and they need to get into the shelter, and they feel that nothing happened.
You know that we found launchers of rockets 2 meters from the fence with Egypt on the corridor.
On the Philadelphia axis.
Yes, on the Philadelphia corridor, 2 meters from the fence, from the Egyptian fence.
Let me. Oh, sorry, but okay.
No.
I have with our last 9 minutes. I have two questions I'd like to ask. Whoever wants to jump in. I think the first question is about National Security Advisor, U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan was in Saudi and in Israel, and it's been. I think I have an idea what you're going to say, but I think it's just important say this, obviously from the U.S. in this administration's position, I should say, it's been clear for months that they've been keen for various reasons. We've talked about the politics for a ceasefire in Gaza, and they want to pivot to normalization with Saudi, which according to reports between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and according to reports, a lot of that has already kind of been worked out. But I think from the Israeli perspective, as much as they want normalization, finishing off Hamas is the higher priority, and that normalization might have to wait, as appealing as it is. That's my understanding. I wonder if any of you disagree with that, or is that what you think also?
I think that it is clear that the priority in Israel is to demolishing, to destroy Hamas military capability. But I think there is more than that. I was in Washington, as you know, and I asked the guys who are running the show relating to the Saudi vision. The Americans have a vision, ceasefire, agreements, Palestinian state. And I asked them, okay, you speak about the forming the Palestinian Authority. What do you mean? And they say less corruption and democratization. This is the two elements that the American side explain what does it mean. I said corruption is not our business. Maybe you have more problems with corruption than us. But if you think that you can take the corruption from the Palestinian Authority, you have to begin a startup how people can live without oxygen. It's the same from the Palestinians' point of view relating to the Palestinian Authority. But this is not important for Israel. What's important for Israel is the question of democratization. Can you guarantee us that in the elections, Hamas will not win? And they were honest enough to say no. Cannot be guaranteed. So I said, what do you want us to live near a Palestinian state controlled by Hamas? Don't you remember the 7th of October? We have an experience. You know, instead of beginning with huge reforms like corruption and democratization, begin with a very little one, that the Palestinian Authority will outlaw Hamas. That's all. They say that cannot be achieved. So what the Americans have in mind is something that, leave alone that we have a priority different than the Americans because we want to destroy Hamas. And I think that strategically, for the long run, is much more important. Because if Israel does not, we will lose our position in the Middle East. It will be clear that everyone can do whatever he wants. But it is more than that. It's deeper than that. The American vision cannot be bought by Israelis after the 7th of October. It doesn't matter if it will be Bibi, it will be Gantz, it will be Gadi, it will be Yair Lapid. It doesn't matter.
Let me
convince Israelis to be ready to taking the risk of having a Palestinian state controlled by Hamas 12 kilometers from my house in Ra'anana, it's ridiculous. No one will buy it.
Mike, we got 3 minutes, so 5 minutes. So I will take 1.5, and I will leave to General Aish another 3.
I have one more question after this, but go ahead, General Narkin, please.
You cannot ask question beyond 11 past 30 at night in Israel.
Yes, I won't.
I think that your question is too black and white, 1 and 0, because as we all understand, it will take time to take out Hamas from Gaza or from Judea and Samaria. And we cannot wait for such a period of time until we are going to move forward with the Saudis. The Saudis' normalization is the only positive step, that potential positive step in the Middle East. This is my opinion, and I think that we should do both. And there is no need to say, okay, let's do that and then do that. We can do both.
Do you think the Saudis would do both? Don't they waiting for some quiet, or you think that's not?
Well, it's depend how you are paint your war and the operation in Gaza. you can do operations in Gaza, and they are not going to be at the war level, and many other options. But if we are going to wait another year and a half and to look for the last rocket, and then to start to negotiate about the normalization with Saudi, I think it might be a mistake.
Okay. One last thing, we got 3 minutes.
Aish, please.
Oh, no, hold on. Let me ask that. So Aisha's been very polite this whole thing. I would say, one last question quickly, and I appreciate how late you all have stayed up for this. I really do, in Israel. One last question quickly. So President Raisi of Iran died. I know none of us will say Kaddish Farm. We don't have a minion here anyway. But I would like to see if, I don't know, maybe Amidjor or Aish want to say, you have an opinion about whether this has any immediate impact on Israel's, what it's dealing with Iran?
Oh, the answer is very clear. No,
Okay.
he was not the decision maker. He was not the important voice in the decision-making process. They will find substitute, they will have an elections, and Khamenei will continue to make the decisions as it was when he was alive.
Okay, Aish, General Aish, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah.
The last,
I'll take 1 minute from what was left. And, we spoke almost 58 minutes about Rafah, about Gaza, and so on and so forth.
What about
I'm
the
af-
North?
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm afraid that everything is linked to the North. What you were asking about Iran is highly relevant because the supreme leader is the instructor of Nasrallah. He is the guy who is taking decisions together with Nasrallah. And I'm afraid that the war is ongoing not only in the south, but also in the north. And this is a real challenge. And I think we should address it and understand the linkage as I described it at the beginning to Gaza, and it won't be solved by itself.
Aish, I'm glad you said it, and General Norkin, I'm very conscious about the North. We will start off next time maybe with that. We just could only pack in so much in this conversation. I want to thank all of you. It's
Thank you.
11:29 in Israel at night. We appreciate you all staying up so late, although I know for General
Thank you
Amidjor,
very much.
this is when he just
Bye.
starts having dinner. So I thank you very much for joining us.
Bye.
And I want to thank everyone for in the audience for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Amidror Norkin, Laila Tov.
Laila
Laila Tov.
Tov. Laila Tov. Bye.